forests. She is in the public affairs office of the Coconino office, which means she's stationed in Flagstaff. She's been there since last September, so she's fairly new, but she has learned learned a lot in the months that she's been there. She was a Peace Corps volunteer in the Ukraine. She was a journalist. She's got a master's in public administration and a BA in journalism from Central Michigan University. And we are very, very happy to have Randi Shaffer with us. Randi, if you want to talk to us for a bit about what's going on with the Forest Service and then take some questions, that would be great. Randi's going to be followed by two people from Friends of the Forest, and I will introduce them when Randi is finished. Thanks.
Sorry. Hey, everyone. So like Ellen said, my name is Randi. My pronouns are she, her. Sorry if it gets a little loud. The stretcher road outside my apartment is kind of loud, but it's really too hot to have all of the windows closed right now. I feel a little bad. I plan on putting together a presentation for you guys about some of the accomplishments that we had during the past fiscal year down in the Red Rocks district, but the Slate Fire popped up and I was the main PIO on that for all of last week and all of the week. And then the Cornville Fire popped up. So I, unfortunately, I'm not as prepared as I would like to be. However, Ellen did let Amy, so I'm sure you guys are familiar with Amy Tinderholt. She is the district ranger for the Red Rocks Ranger District. A list of some of the topics that you guys are interested in, and I do have some talking points to go on. And please, at any point, feel free to leave a question in the chat. I have it right on the side of my screen. I can see it, so you guys don't have to flag me down or anything. I'll be paying pretty close attention on anything that I can't answer. I am happy to write down and bring it over to Amy and get some answers for you guys. Again, like Ellen said, I have only been here at the Coconino since September, and starting a new job in the middle of a pandemic in a part of the country that you'd never visited, let alone lived in before, is a little bit of a challenge. But I am going to do everything that I can to get all of your questions answered and relayed to the appropriate parties to answer them. So I figured I'd give you guys a little update with the Cornville Fire. I know Ellen said that was a little too close to home, and yeah, we drove past it on Tuesday. My boss and I were out in the area taking a look at it, but the good news is that it's 92% contained, and it's still smoldering at about 1,240 acres. So there's kind of some internal pockets of the fire that are like slowly smoldering and producing light smoke, but the Type 3 incident management team that was there taking over that incident, they've demobilized, handed it back to local resources. And so firefighters with our Red Rock Ranger District are patrolling and doing operations until it's fully contained, which means no more hot spots, no more sparks, no more chance of any kind of activity. We still don't have a cause as to that, and any guesses that I gave you would be like purely speculation. But typically when we see wildfires occurring off the side of the highway, it's either dragging chains or cigarette butts. So I see I have a question about why forests and trails haven't been closed. So that kind of gets into our restrictions process. So we have the stage 1 restrictions, the stage 2 restrictions, and then stage 3, which is also known as the forest closures. And we go by metrics and science for that. So we have a fuels planner, and we have an entire team that will go out and they'll test moisture levels. They'll look at the amount of rainwater that we've received. They'll consult NWS weather forecasts, and they will take all of those metrics into consideration when they make the decision to move into stage 1 restrictions, into stage 2 restrictions, and then full forest closures. In terms of closing the forests and trails, it's always a really, really hard decision. Obviously, we love the forest a lot. We know you love the forest a lot, and it's public land. It's a really, really hard balance between cutting it off to the public, because it is public land, and we do all want to access our forest. We want to access our trails and our roads, and we want to enjoy what's out there, versus balancing that with the safety of the forest and the long-term longevity. And so it is a really hard decision, and it is not a decision that we make lightly. And we do have an entire team that takes into consideration things like moisture levels and like fuel sources. And of course, the historic drought that we've got going on right now is not helpful whatsoever. But yeah, it is a very hard balance between keeping those public lands open to the public and, you know, closing them for this long-term safety and health of the forest. In an ideal situation, you know, everybody would be able to responsibly access our forest and all of its resources, but unfortunately that's not the world we live in, so we kind of have to make those tough calls, those tough decisions. Does anyone else have any questions? Feel free to kind of start spitting them out in the box here, and I'll do my best to address them, or anything you would like to hear me talk about. All right, if there are no questions coming in, I can talk a little bit about parking at trailheads, because I know that Ellen had mentioned that that's a big issue for, you know, down in Sedona, the residents down there. And as somebody who has been one of the jerks that, you know, pulls my SUV off to the side of the road to go hike a trail, it's unavoidable. You know, I want to enjoy the beauty of Sedona. You guys love the beauty of Sedona. And right now there's no good solution, but we are working closely with local communities, residents, and stakeholders. We can't build our way out of this problem. I'm sure you guys know about building ordinances and what it's like to build in Sedona, but we are working with the city of Sedona to kind of talk about like alternate transportation. So maybe busing systems or biking or walking, etc. All right, some more questions in here. What will the Forest Service do to address bark beetles and the spread? So I actually don't have that off the top of my head, but I'm happy to address our silviculturist. We have been getting that question a lot lately. So I will take that down and get an answer for you, Ellen. Thank you very much. It makes it easier when you guys give me questions because I don't have to just senselessly ramble about things you may or may not be interested in. All right. What else? The status. Okay. The level of the forest right now and why aren't they closed? So we actually have, this goes back to the science and data, we have a call tomorrow morning where we'll be discussing stage 3 restrictions and partial or full forest closures. So that's where it's at right now. Like I said, it's a full ordeal. We'll have calls every week, and it's not just the Coconino, it's all of our partner agencies. So it's, you know, the Kaibab and Grand Canyon National Park, the city of Flagstaff up here, the county. Who else is in on this call? We've got APS on the call, NWS, and we have this call every Monday, and it's all of our partner agencies where we all give all of our data to try to make the best informed decisions about forest closures and fire restrictions. So we will be having a discussion tomorrow about stage 3. I don't know if that means we're going to go into stage 3 or if we're not going to go into it, but it is something that we discuss heavily multiple times a week. Let's see what else is in here. The status of the slate fire. So the slate fire originated about 23 miles northwest of the city of Flagstaff. Right now, it's a little over 11,000 acres, and it is at about 53% containment, I believe, last I heard last night. It's slowly moving at a growth of about 200 acres a day. They've got line in and around it. There's no progression moving north. There's no progression moving west. It is still kind of slowly moving its creek east, but we had some assist from retardant drops and dozers earlier this week, and some erratic winds caused some spot fires. And luckily our crews were able to get those out almost immediately. So right now our containment jumped from 33% to 53%, I believe, within the span of a day. And we're seeing that moderate growth at about 200 acres a day. So things are looking pretty good over there. Let's see. What else is over here? Oh my God, so many questions. Thank you guys, I appreciate it. So boondocking seems to be a threat to the forests. Is there a stage when you would close the forest to disperse camping? We don't close the forest to disperse camping, but we do restrict campfires in dispersed camping, and that's part of those stage 1 restrictions. Is during stage 1 restrictions, you can have campfires at developed campsites, but not dispersed camping. And the reason that we do that isn't so that we make money off of campsites or anything. It's because it's in an area that's pretty accessible. So if anything were to happen, we can get to it quicker and we can kind of mitigate that incident, versus dispersed camping, where, you know, people will head to very, very remote wilderness. And if they have a fire and something happens, it's harder for us to get out there. And I'm sure you guys know that with wildfires, time is of the essence, and every minute counts. And the sooner that you can get there, the better it is for mitigating any sort of, you know, major incident, whether it's type 3, 2, or 1. So can you remind us what stage 2 fire restrictions mean? Definitely. So stage 2 fire restrictions mean that you can't have campfires at dispersed camping sites or at campgrounds. So the difference in that is stage 1 is campfires at campsites. Stage 2 is no campfires at all. You also cannot smoke. You have to smoke in a vehicle. And you also can't, hold on, let me actually find really quickly for you. We have a really useful flyer that details everything that stage 2 restrictions encompass. And so I can find that for you and post it in the chat. All right. So here in the chat is a list of what stage 2 fire restrictions entail. It's our official forest order. So it breaks down everything. That stage 2 restrictions encompass. And there are, I like to joke with my boss about how I didn't realize how many types of grills there were until I moved here, because 6 or 7 times a day we get calls from the public asking if pellet grills are allowed or if Traeger grills are allowed. And I realize the wording in that is slightly vague, but that's something that we're hoping to address next go around. I feel like every time I look, there's a new type of grill on the market that I'm not aware of. Let's see. So what about expanding the parking lots at the trailheads? So that is a good question. And I think that is something that we would have to work with the city of Sedona on. I can add that to my list and I can check with Amy and I can get back with you, Ellen, about an answer to that. So what does stage 3 mean? Stage 3 means that we will close portions of the forest. So that was kind of that question we talked about earlier, where it's like a hard balance between closing trails and closing campgrounds and closing parts of the forest, and allowing people access to their public land. So that's what stage 3 is it's either a full or partial forest closure. And you know, again, we like to avoid that because they're public lands and we want the public to access them. But at the same time, we want to protect those public lands so that in the future, the public, they'll be there for the public to access them. And I can also find a link to our various stages of fire restrictions on our site and post that in the chat as well. Are there any controlled burns planned during the drought? No, we follow fire restrictions. So if we say you can't have fires, we are certainly not having any prescribed burns. So we don't have any planned for the foreseeable future. And again, kind of like our fire restrictions, a lot of science goes into these. We look at wind patterns, wind conditions. A lot of times the decision to have a prescribed burn is so last minute because we have to take everything into consideration regarding health and safety and wind patterns and fuel moisture and weather conditions. And so that there's just as much science that goes into that as determining fire restrictions. What is going to be done about the parking specifically right after Devil's Bridge on Forest Service land in Yavapai County outside Sedona limits? That's another question I'm going to add to my list to bring to Amy. Let me paste that right here. And I think this kind of goes back to we're working with the city on it, with building restrictions and building ordinances. Sometimes things like that, there's a lot of bureaucracy involved, but I know Amy said in her email that we are working on solutions with the city for that. Unfortunately, I personally don't have a solution, or I don't have a listed response for that question. Do you think expanding trailhead parking is a long-term sustainable solution? Wouldn't this just overload the trails? Extra parking was built at Cathedral Trailhead a few years ago, and it clearly has not helped. That's also a really good question. And I know that it's not just Sedona that's having these problems right now. I'm not sure if you guys saw a few days ago, the Wall Street Journal ran a story about how national parks are actually overwhelmed and closing to the public, and a lot of them are shutting their doors at 7:30. And I think a lot of this is COVID related, where things that most Americans would typically do for entertainment, bars, restaurants, malls, street festivals, international vacations have all been canceled. And so a lot of Americans have been turning to the great outdoors. And so that means things like national parks or places like Sedona they're in the spotlight right now. And, you know, like Ellen said, most of you guys aren't Sedona natives, you moved there for the beauty. So you understand why it's a huge tourist spot. And I'm sure you guys do love like sharing that with everyone. You know, it's always exciting when I have friends visit and I take them down to Sedona and I get to be like, oh yeah, like this is my forest. Like, of course it's great. But yeah, that's another Amy question, is expanding trailhead parking. And I think that this kind of goes back to one of the solutions is busing and, you know, building parking lots elsewhere and busing interested hikers to trailheads. But I will also copy this question down so that I can get it to Amy so she can get you guys a better response. Have you personally walked many of the trails around Sedona so you understand how much fuel has built up due to climate change and lack of rain? Yes, I have. I love hiking, and I spend a lot of my free weekends when I'm not working down in Sedona hiking, just personally. My dog really likes hiking. He loves dragging me along on his leash, so I have spent a lot of time down there. And yeah, it is bad. And I know I keep referring to our team of scientists, but I have firsthand seen the problem. I've seen the browning, the yellowing, the dying off of, you know, a lot of fuel types out there. And yeah, it is concerning, but I have heard that we will be having a monsoon season this year. I'm not sure how many of you guys have heard that, but our National Weather Report services indicate that we will be getting a normal monsoon season this year. So I'm fingers crossed that does happen. That's what I've been hearing. And again, having just moved here in September, I don't have much to compare it to, but I'm optimistic, as I'm sure that you guys all are. We have been seeing a lot of Forest Service fire trucks out and about. How do you decide where to deploy those trucks? So that's a good question. A lot of times it all comes down to dispatch. So we'll get calls for smoke checks a lot. I'm sure you guys know we have lookouts situated at the top of various peaks and, you know, high topographic locations around the forest. And we'll get calls into dispatch about smoke checks. And it's not just from our lookouts, it's from the general public as well. And so a lot of the times that you see fire trucks out and about, they're heading to smoke checks. And it's, you know, I guess a better safe than sorry. And the first time I saw them around, I'm like, wow, that seems like a massive waste of fuel. But I guess, you know, it's the trade-off for making sure we don't have a catastrophic, you know, type 1 incident that burns out a good portion of the forest. And, you know, even personally, I've been out hiking before and I see the trucks go by and I get a little ping on my phone, which means I have a text from dispatch, and I'll take a look. And sure enough, the trucks are heading in the area of a smoke effect that was called into dispatch. So that's a lot of the trucks that are deployed out are just responding to smoke checks and the calls that we get into dispatch. And then how does the Forest Service interact with local fire departments? So that's actually a very good question that I am not too sure about. Most of my work that I've done so far has been interagency collaboration, so between us and the DOI and the BLM. But I personally have had very, very little interaction with local fire departments. So I would actually be curious to have an answer to that question as well. So I will add it to my list to bring up with Amy and get you guys an answer for. Is there a best number to call if a citizen wants to report smoke or a fire? Yes, so the best number that you can call is our dispatch number. And that is, hold on, let me get it for you. So for a dispatch emergency, you can call 928-527-3552, and I will post that in the chat as well. And that's also a great number to call, not just for smoke or fire concerns, but also for any sort of law-breaking activities. So illegal campfires, illegal trail usage, you know, if you see somebody like carving on rocks or any kind of law violation, you can call dispatch. They will make sure that your call gets routed to the correct place. So if there are any doubts as to who to call, dispatch. It's a call center, so they will make sure that your call gets to the correct location. Is InsoWeb the best place to follow the progress of fires, and does the Forest Service have a similar site? So yes, definitely InsoWeb, and that is what I personally do. Is we'll attend our meetings where we get the updates for the fires, and I will update InsoWeb first. I'll update it with the acreage, the containment, the number of personnel out there. Then I'll draft a press release, send a press release out, and put the updates on our website. So InsoWeb is definitely the best place to go for fire updates. Other than that, if you go to our website, which is fs.usda.gov/Coconino, on the left-hand side, there is a news and events column, and this is where we put all of our press releases. So I will post this in the chat as well. And this is not just our press releases regarding fires, but this is our press releases regarding everything. So recreation, or, you know, law enforcement, or if we're seeking input on public programs, et cetera, et cetera. And if you want all of these press releases delivered directly to your email, I'll post another link in here. So this mumble jumble big gold block of text right here, this is a sign up for our press releases through Constant Contact, and you can have them delivered directly to your email. So anytime anything gets sent out to that news and events page, you can get it emailed straight to your email right there. So what is the best way for us to get notified of an impending fire? Right there, sign up for those emails. We will post news releases for larger wildfires or for big events happening with fires. Other than that, we update InsoWeb and our Facebook and Twitter a lot more frequently if we just have some small updates. So with the Slate fire, it's been having a moderate growth of about 200 acres a day and containment's up. It's not really, it's kind of, we don't want to send out too many press releases because it's spam and people unsubscribe. So we keep the bigger updates to press releases and smaller updates. So like minimal fire growth, or like upped containment, or just like shifting of resources. If we're sending hotshot crews in or out, we'll just post those updates on Facebook, Twitter, and InsoWeb. But if you want something direct to your email, if a bigger wildfire is kind of like on the cusp, we'll usually issue a press release, and that is the best place to sign up for them. Then let me find the forest or the fire restrictions really quickly. I can post that in the chat for you guys as well. So here is a link to our page detailing fire restrictions and what each stage means. So that's the stage, or that's the site that I send out every time I get a public email or a Facebook message with somebody asking what those different stages mean. Is the Forest Service experiencing the same shortage of staffing the public sector is seeing? I believe so. I can't speak to all areas of the Forest Service, but I do know that our wildland firefighting crews are fairly understaffed, especially in our region, Region 3. And I know that personally, my office is understaffed. We are missing, my team is supposed to have 5 people, and right now we have 3 of those 5. But the federal hiring process is somewhat of a boon, and it's very, very hard sometimes to get qualified individuals through just based on how the federal hiring process is. And yeah, we are seeing some, you know, I think we always want more resources. That's kind of I think everyone wants more resources all the time, but we are, yeah, our wildland firefighting crews are short-staffed, and I can't speak to all sectors, but I know that my team is also short-staffed. So it doesn't look like there are any more questions. Does anyone have anything last minute before I kind of wrap it up and turn it on over? All right, well, thank you guys very much. I'm gonna drop my email here in the chat, and you guys can feel free to send me some emails, questions, comments, concerns, and I will do my best to get back with you. And then all of the questions that I couldn't answer here today, I did take notes, and I will be sending them to Amy, and I'm sure she'll forward them to Ellen so that we can get some responses for you guys. Thank you so much for inviting me to talk today, and I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of today's meeting.
Thank you, Randy. That was excellent. You're a fast talker and you had so much information. So we really appreciate that. That was great. Keep up the good work and keep us informed. Yeah, we will definitely disseminate any information that comes from Amy. Amy, Rick, could you get that? Amy Tinderholt that Randy's been talking to is the district ranger for Sedona. And she would have loved to have come here today to be with us, but she was just swamped with all the action that's going on these days. So she sent Randy, and we appreciate it. Also on the program here today, we have Annie Glickstein and Jerry, let me see, I don't want to mispronounce your name, Jerry, Piepiora. They are both with Friends of the Forest. Friends of the Forest is a nonprofit, non-political organization. They have been around for a long time, and there are branches throughout the country. Annie joined the Friends of the Forest in 2018 when she moved to Sedona and became its president last year. She has been starting to reopen the programs that were shut down during COVID and has received numerous awards for her work. She's delivered Meals on Wheels. She's been a Red Cross disaster team captain. And something that I know will appeal to everybody on this call, because you're all such dog lovers, is that she and her husband foster puppies for the Humane Society. So Annie will be talking to us about the work that the Friends of the Forest does, and then she will introduce Jerry, who will talk about the graffiti remediation projects going on. Jerry's been head of the remediation team for the past 7 years. So Annie, welcome. Love to have you here. Thanks.
Well, thank you for the introduction. And Randy, thank you for all the work you're doing. I'm glad you joined the team. So I'm going to talk about the Friends of the Forest and the different programs that we have. So I'm going to share my screen and see if this works. And hopefully you can all see that. Can someone confirm that they can see it, or?
We can see it.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can see it.
So I'm starting out. I want to scare everybody because I have a PowerPoint and look at all the words on it. But honestly, after the first couple of slides, it's just pictures. You'll be fine. So I wanted to just share that the Friends of the Forest in Sedona, there's Friends of the Forest volunteer groups all over the country, but not associated with us. This Friends of the Forest, we're here for the Coconino Red Rock National Forest Service. We do expand our little area, and we go up to Flag to help, or we'll go over to Prescott National Forest and help. Certainly we're down at Fossil Creek. So we have a wide territory, but we're our own little group. So our primary goals are we help the Forest Service maintain the trails and the cultural resources like the V-Bar-V and Pulaski. We reduce environmental damage from increasing visitor impact. We develop public education programs, promote positive community relations. We enhance the forest experience for visitors and residents. And if you go to our website, you would see our mission statement. And honestly, everything we do is because the Forest Service is asking us for assistance. When Randy said, you know, about the staffing, well, we add to that staffing with our volunteers. you know, a lot of the volunteers that we have are retired, and they could be engineers, they could have been firemen, they could have been, you know, nurses, whatever in their past life. And they bring all those tools to help fill the gap between the needs and the resources of the Forest Service. So I'm really thrilled that we get to do all this. They give us projects like you wouldn't believe. And they give us the training that we need and the safety educational parts. So during the fiscal year 2020, which, you know, we had quite a 2020, the members logged an amazing 29,535.45 hours of volunteer time. And the group activities were canceled for the most part during that year. So that meant we had to be doing all those hours either individually or with our cohabitating partners. And the visitor center was closed, BBRB was closed, Pulaski's shut down. So all the hours that we did were either on the computer supporting the Forest Service, or we were out on the trails, you know, doing our thing. So now most of our committees are back up and running. And so I wanted to share with you what our committees are and how our organization is broken down. So we have a board of directors. We have committee chairs that lead the specialized activities and groups. I'm not a fan of the word committee. I think they're more like teams. And we have, somebody's got to take care of our website. We have somebody that does publicity. We have somebody else that does our membership. We have database administration. We have apps that we use. All these things, plus all the jobs that we do. So our memberships are similar to yours. It's $25 for an individual member and $35 for the family. We have lifetime memberships as well. So if anybody wanted to join, there's your fees, and that's wonderful. But when Jerry is speaking, he's going to be talking about our graffiti removal team. And if you weren't a member, which is just fine, but you saw graffiti or you saw an issue and you wanted to report it somehow, Jerry's going to be able to help you with that. So when I first joined Friends of the Forest, I signed up for the first committee that I thought, oh, I could do that, Trail Patrol. Trail Patrol goes out, and the Trail Patrol committee chair actually organizes group hikes periodically. And during that group hike, that's where I got my first volunteer badge, you know, to say, you know, volunteer for the Forest Service. And I got a name tag for the Friends of the Forest. And the app, they showed me how to download the app that we use. And that app helps me to report things. So while we were hiking, I saw that I was getting lost on one of the trails. And I said, wow, I'm not quite sure which way to go. And they said, well, that's a problem. They knew the trail, but I didn't. And so we took out the app. They showed me how to use it. And I clicked on it, signage. And then I clicked on it, the GPS location. So it actually found exactly where I was. And then I was able to say, need a sign here, you know, to direct people. And then I took a close-up picture of the site where I thought they needed to put the sign. And then I took a picture of the area. So he, you know, whoever was doing the sign could see generally it's this location, and look, it's a kind of a fork, and I wasn't sure. Well, the next day I got an email saying my report was completed. And I'm like, what is this? And I opened it up, and the app had reported the trail problem, the signage problem, to the sign guy. The sign guy came, he fixed it, and he took a picture of it and closed that report. And it actually lets me know that it was completed. So I thought this was like so amazing. So now I use the apps all the time. So Trail Patrol, you could do as a group to learn the ropes and find the trails and not get lost. And also we help people that are lost. You see somebody looking at a sign and they look a little befuddled. It's like, oh, do you need help? And they're like, yeah. And so you can kind of guide them. So my husband and I, we just hike all the time by ourselves, and we can report our Trail Patrol hours. So it's either going out as a group or going by yourself, which is kind of nice. So another thing that we do is the visitor information services. We have volunteers working in the visitor center, and also the interpretive and educational programs. So I had gone to an interpretive program at the visitor center, and it was actually the Botanical Gardens in Phoenix. One of the biologists there, or botanical garden people, came up and was speaking about ancient agaves. So they have really nice programs. We go out and do air and water quality monitoring. The Forest Service signs out a vehicle to us, and we drive to remote locations, and the volunteers, they collect the data and report it back. So usually Tuesdays, I think we're doing the one thing, and the guys set up the schedules. So I see a question here. Or a statement. I had the same experience last year, got lost on the Bolton Trail. Someone came along and got me reoriented. When I got back, I went to Red Rock Ranger Station and reported the area and asked for signage. Haven't been back to that trail, so not sure if it was addressed. What was that the best action to take if I don't have the app? Okay, so that's a good question. If you don't have the app, then try to get the GPS location and a picture of it. And when you get back, you can just go to the visitor center like you did, or you can go to the Friends of the Forest Sedona website, and you can actually send a comment to the Friends of the Forest, and the president gets that email, and I reply back to them as soon as I can. Give me a day or two. And with that GPS and the information, I can send it to the correct chairperson. So if it was for signage, I would send that to our trail maintenance and construction team, and they would see what they could do to get that resolved. So cool. Another committee we have is the cultural resources. So my understanding is V-Bar-V Heritage Site is reopening on the 18th, which is tomorrow, from 9:30 to 3, Friday through Monday. Palatki's due to reopen on July 2nd. So our volunteers are very excited to get back there. They love being docents and doing all that. We have special projects. This committee is kind of an umbrella committee. This is where we test things out to see if we're going to make them into a committee. So we have a photography team that's been photographing all the archaic characters, which is pretty cool. They're still doing it, and it's tedious work. Another special project is the visitor center. We're trying to fix the ethnobotanical gardens there. So you may see us out there weeding and pulling. The visitor center is open now 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Thursday through Tuesday. Wednesdays, it doesn't open until noon because they kind of want to be selfish and spend time with the volunteers, giving them special treatment, which is kind of cool. And then What's next? Oh, trail ambassadors. This is still under special projects. If this project works out really well, like I'm hoping it will, then we're going to make trail ambassadors into its own committee. This, you can see to the right on that railing, there's a temperature gauge there. This is the Bruce Brockett Trailhead. And we've set up on weekends during the hottest time of the year right now to educate people. People are, they've been walking on these trails at 100-degree weather with one little bottle of water thinking, oh, I got water, I'm good. I can do this trail. This trail is a tough trail. Bruce Brockett to Bell Trail to the Crack. It's like 4 miles in and the last mile is up and kind of rugged. And so we're out there not to stop people, but to help them to have a safe trip. So we don't have to send search and rescue in. And, in the fire department, they're taxed. So we're trying to educate people right there at the trailhead. How much water do you have? Because you're going to need a gallon of water per person. We actually have a heat temperature gun, and we shoot it at the ground there on that sand, and it came up like 140 degrees. So people that are trying to walk dogs, it's like, hey, this may not be good for those paws, Also offering alternative trails in case it is that hot or that people didn't expect that it was going to be that challenging a hike, trying to find places where they can go to get to the water a lot quicker and easier, especially with small kids. So I think that's a really beneficial project that we've got going, and we're working with the Forest Service at their request, and they're very supportive. They got us the canopy and the cooler with ice and water. So can I post info about the app I mentioned? The app is only for the Friends of the Forest volunteers. It's not for the public, but you can go through the website, and I'll post the website address when I'm done sharing the screen. The River Ranger support is another one. And you're welcome. Thanks for the work at Bell Trail. My husband is with search and rescue. Yeah, it is a big deal. So River Ranger support, when the Forest Service has to go out on the river, we can help transport all their gear and their manpower, and we help them get everything loaded up, and that's another cool thing. Wildlife, fish, and rare plants. We work so much with Janie, our biologist, and we've done, fencing. We've done where they're trying to save the terrain there, the bats, kestrel boxes. It's 550,000 acres of splendor that we're working with. It's not just Sedona. Oh, and the ancient agaves. When Janie sends us on a project to hunt for something, she'll pull out the map, she'll educate us what we need, and then she gives us little sections that, okay, this is yours, you claimed it. And then we go out and we get the data, and she gives us the tools to report it. Monarch tagging. Here we are, it's very methodical because you have to be following the science. So you get a small area, it's got to be measured, what you're going to be checking every week. And then we, when it grows, we hunt for the monarchs and net them and put the little tags on them. We also were doing a study for Arizona toads, and sitting on the computer, I love sitting on the computer. So I was listening to the recordings, trying to search for the elusive toad, which we weren't having much success with. Trail maintenance and construction. If you see trails with steps like this, you can bet we were somewhere in there helping. The fires that Randi was talking about, when those fires are over and those big trees start falling the next few years or, whenever, well, we get those reports too of trees down on the trails, and we send our teams out there to go do it. And this picture over to the right, I just want you to know, I am a part of the trail maintenance team. This is another female. This isn't just for men only. We do what we can do. And I love going out there doing that. Any other questions for me on all the teams that we have for the trail, for Friends of the Forest? We're pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to let Jerry talk, because this to me is one of the most important committees. Jerry is the chairperson for the graffiti removal team. It's not graffiti chairperson because he doesn't do graffiti. But Jerry taught me everything I know. So thank you, Jerry.
That's scary. Good morning, all. I'm looking at the screen. Can you minimize that for a minute, Annie? We'll get into some of those slides in a second. What I'm hoping people can see is the picture of the photograph behind me, which was taken yesterday at Devil's Bridge. And we had 15 people up there until it got too hot, removing tremendous amount of graffiti. Came out very well, but when you have that kind of a group, you can accomplish a lot. Is Randi still here? Or is she gone? I guess maybe Randi's gone. Well, I've listened to her very intently, and of course, all the comments Annie brought out. I'm chairman of a committee that probably nobody wants to have. It would be certainly nice if graffiti removal wasn't necessary. What we thought early last year at the beginning of COVID is that we would have fewer people on the trails and the graffiti would drop accordingly, and it worked out just the opposite. People were escaping from some of our nearby states and coming out here, and I talked to one group of young people and I said, "What are you all doing here as this big group?" And they said, we come to Arizona because we can do what we want. And that was kind of a telling comment, because we learned very quickly that the graffiti continued to grow, as did the amount of tourists and some of the comments Randi was making about increased number of trailheads and even more capability, or not the capability, of handling even more people. But we have found ourselves in a situation where we've got in excess of 60 volunteers working on the graffiti removal, and we keep them busy. We are out all the time. Early on in the COVID, we could only have an individual at a time. So couples and individuals are going out and trying to do what they can. As we've relaxed some of the regulations, we can go out in bigger groups, and thank God we can do what we're doing. I'm trying to condense a 2-hour class in just a couple of minutes. Where do we work? As Annie said, the Coconino Forest, the Red Rock Ranger District. We've also been asked to assist and do some training up in Flagstaff, up on the Mogollon Rim, as well as the Prescott National Forest. So we've got quite a crew that has developed a number of different procedures over the last 7, 8, 9 years that we can remove all kinds of graffiti, except in historical locations, and try to make it look as naturally as possible. What kind of graffiti do we see? Well, you can imagine, Annie, there you go, thank you. You're seeing just a couple of instances of where our groups are working from, and we remove anything from scratching, which you'll see up in the upper left corner, to paint, to black magic markers on rocks, and we're seeing it on trees itself. Annie, next. Here's an example, happens to be Bell Trail. and you could see what happens. Um, and I have a little, people ask us all the time, who does this? I look at the group that we're talking with this morning, and I frankly can't see any of you ladies and gentlemen out there on our trails doing this kind of destruction. So you try to imagine who is out there doing this, and I don't think I have to comment on who you think might be doing it as well. But gets to be a real problem. But we have the ability to go back that one slide, Annie. We have the ability to turn that mess on the left into what you see on the right without destroying what the original sign and what the original intent was. Somebody mentioned Bell Trail a couple of minutes ago. There's a very large boulder about 3/4 of a mile or a mile out from the trailhead, which is covered with rock art, archaeological rock art that we really try to protect. Somebody just spray painted it a couple of weeks ago, and we will be out next Tuesday morning to try to remediate all of the spray paint without damaging the rock art that's underneath. So we try to keep track of where we're needed. Next, Annie, thank you. This happens to be at Cathedral, certainly one of the most popular sites in our area. And a situation where somebody gets out of their car with spray paint or fingernail polish or markers, and they just think it's neat to turn this thing into an art gallery that nobody wants to see. But we can take this and turn it into the picture you see on the right. It takes a little time. It takes a lot of effort, water, and some other products we use to get rid of the paint. But we have the ability to do that. Annie, next. This was the pictures on the left were down by a place called Lawrence Crossing, not too far from V-Bar-V. And some people were pretty artistic in trying to create a frog. And we got rid of all. We got rid of the frog. We hope we didn't hurt anybody's feelings. Pictures on the right were out on, I think this was out on West Fork, and getting rid of markers, fingernail polish, that kind of stuff. It can be really difficult. And those two pictures kind of are before and after out on West Fork. Next, Annie. We literally have thousands of photographs of locations and different kinds of damage, from paint to scratching to we're even finding now spray paint in trees, both live and dead trees, and carvings. And one of the favorites for everybody seems to be making these little pyramid-shaped triangular social cairns. There's a long story behind social cairns, and I can answer questions if you have, because there are people out there that think that building social cairns is fine. And I had one lady tell me it helps her aura. Whatever that's supposed to mean, I'm not sure. But we follow the guidelines, and we follow kind of a mission statement that says, leave no trace. We'd like to see the trails and the forest left in the condition that you found it when you went out, and we don't need to know that you were out on the trails. I think that's it, Mayor. There's one more that I'm going to talk about in a minute. We'll save that comment. I saw some of the comments. Let me see an email. Is there a graffiti problem in the forest more serious than in the past? Wow. Unfortunately, the problem is much greater than we've seen in the past. And I'm not sure, again, it's kind of a subjective thing. Certainly we have more tourists than we've ever had when we're now exceeding, I think, Annie, you may have a better number on this, but we're now exceeding 2.5 million visitors a year. But it seems like we have an inordinate amount of additional graffiti. Again, your guess is as good as mine. Whether it's the attitude of some of the younger people, it's difficult to say. We had a situation recently where some of the high school people went out and decided they were going to use black paint and a brush and painted a bunch of obscenities on some of the rocks. Um, it's hard to answer why. I have an opinion on the kinds of people that are out there damaging our environment. Some of it and a lot of it really is fairly simple stuff like, you know, you draw a heart and Bill loves Mary. And I think we all did this in one form or another perhaps when we were kids. And, you know, that's fairly easy to remove, but it's the people that are getting out of their vehicles and intentionally going out into the forest to cause damage. Those are the people we're really looking for. Very difficult to catch. We've talked about signs, cameras, but you know, if you're from Ohio and you're out there, and I'm not picking on Ohio, maybe I should say California because we have a lot more tourists from California. But if you're damaging the environment and there's a camera looking at you and you get back into your car and go home, do you really know who you are? I see a message, can you post a sign? We work for the Forest Service, as you well know, and our ability to post a sign at a trailhead obviously has to be determined by Amy and her field people. And I can understand in part where the Forest Service doesn't want visitors to get out of their vehicles and all they see is negative signs, you know, no trash, no graffiti, don't do this, don't do that. And so they're reluctant in general to add many signs that are telling people don't do this and don't do that, whether they're necessary or not. We each have different opinions. We're working with them. We're working with the Forest Service now on allowing us to add some signs at the kiosks at the major trailheads. You know, the Bell Rocks and Devil's Bridge Cathedral, and places like that. Slide Rock was a good example. They have a nice sign about don't deface the rocks and no graffiti. And we had to go down there because somebody spray painted the sign. So whatever that tells you. How do we know about where the graffiti is? And I've seen some emails and some posts earlier in the presentation. Annie talked about the app, and a lot of our reports come from the app, from our different crews and teams and committees. We're getting pretty well known on a lot of the social media sites like Stewards of Sedona and Sedona Love or whatever it's called. And as we're getting more well known, we're seeing more reports of people who belong to those organizations posting things that we can then follow up. They even know how to get a hold of us directly. As Amy said, getting on to the Friends of the Forest website. We also get reports just from visitors and hikers that can find how to get in touch with us on the Friends of the Forest website. So we're not lacking for people to tell us where the graffiti is. It's just trying to keep up with it. And it used to be perhaps maybe 700-800 hours a year. And we're going to be exceeding 2,000 hours this year, just trying to keep up. Whether we're doing that or not, it's hard to tell because we can send a group out like we did at Devil's Bridge yesterday. We can send 15 people, and tomorrow morning, who knows what it's going to look like. Go back a couple of slides, Annie. Oh, let me make one comment before we get to this. You can leave that up. Who should clean graffiti? We ask the public, we ask the visitors, please report it. Don't try to clean it yourself. We spend an awful lot of time training our people in different kinds of methods, depending on the kinds of graffiti we get. And of course, the final product is we try to make it as natural as we can before the graffiti existed. There are some good Samaritans who are trying to assist us, and it looks like somebody took sandpaper or just did a bunch of rock scraping and tried to remove it. And when you walk away, it really doesn't look much better than before the graffiti, before the damage. So we ask people to report. Please don't clean. Let us know. We'll take care of it. To this slide, I like this slide for many, many reasons. One of my last points for this morning, we talk about the future. You know, comments were, is it getting worse? Yeah, certainly it's getting worse. What do we look like 3, 4, 5, 8, 10 years from now? Does this trend continue? Is it going to be out of control like in most cities? And I know the challenges that the national parks have, and it's pretty amazing. It's pretty depressing at times. One of our members here in this slide had his grandkids visiting, and he showed them some graffiti on Red Rock, and he said they spent the rest of the morning looking for more graffiti. I think that's kind of neat in a way, but do we have to depend on that generation to finally have some respect for our environment? I hope not, but if we get more people like this as they grow up, maybe in the future, we won't need a person like me trying to remove all this damage. But that's why I thought that slide was particularly telling, and that maybe that's what the future really is going to look like. We get to be cynical sometimes out on the trails. When we were there a couple of days ago, now we came back and it's the same thing over and over again. We try to keep our people upbeat and positive of what we're doing, and sometimes we have to go home at night and say we did a good thing. We restored part of our trails back to the way it should be. We can't control tomorrow, but we have to maintain some attitude of positiveness, because it can get a little bit depressing and frustrating at times. My wife is also part of the search and rescue team, and we get all kinds of reports back from them, not just searching and rescue, but what they find when they get out there. So how do we report? As Annie talked about, here are several sites from the National Forest to our website, to our graffiti email, and the city, et cetera, et cetera. So hopefully there's not a problem in being able to let us know that you need us. We will respond as quickly as we can, and we'll advise the person reporting that we took care of the problem and here's what it now looks like. One of the most troubling areas right now, of course, is going to be down on Oak Creek and the many areas up and down 89A, where we seem to get an awful lot of people coming down with cans and cans and cans of spray paint. And we stood in the middle of Oak Creek on many occasions trying to remove spray paint on these large boulders, and that's a real challenge. Anyway, let's see, what else do we have? Maybe hire a marketing agency. Good idea. We've talked about that. How can we get the message out to people? Do we have flyers that we can present to rental agencies, to hotels? We're finding that these companies, private companies that are the Jeeps, the ATVs, and the hotels, and the travel companies, they're issuing directions, photographs, coordinates, and how to get to some of our more sensitive locations, which obviously that just brings more people and more graffiti. And if we scratch over something that's historic, we can't clean it, because anything we do to try to remove the damage is going to make the rock art in even worse shape. There are some areas like an incident. We've been to all of these trails many, many times. Up on Soldiers Pass is a popular area called the Soldiers Pass Arches, and probably many of you have been up there. There used to be a great deal of rock art up in the arches, and it's pretty much all destroyed, like Fay Canyon Arch. There used to be a lot of rock art up there. But it's to the point now where there really isn't much worth saving. So when we go up there, we try to clean everything, everything that we see. But we're working on several different programs with the Forest Service on how to get the message out about being responsible, and we go back to the leave no trace kind of theme. Maybe we get some T-shirts next, and we'll advertise "Leave No Trace." Um, Thank you for restoring the natural look. Um, we don't, I think um, we know that we're not completely solving the problem. Um, when we pass people on the trails all the time, they thank us. Um, and they'll say, well, we didn't see any graffiti, which means we did a good thing that day. Um, we do the best we can in keeping up. We keep developing new tools of on how we can remove graffiti and make it look natural. But it is a challenge. Fortunately, as I said earlier, we've got a large group of volunteers, and they are very active. And when we need a group of people, it's very rare that I don't get more than we really need. So we like to say it's really a social outing with a little work thrown in from time to time. Last one I see, leave no trace. Um, Yesterday when we were up on Devil's Bridge, we literally took bags of trash. We don't like to pick up human waste, and dogs, a perfect example. People go up with their little doggy bags, and they, put the dog mess in the bag, and then they leave the bag in the middle of the trail. We'll come back later and pick it up. Well, okay, I hear you. But Devil's Bridge is one of the more, obviously one of the more popular sites. And there are no restrooms out on that trail. From the trailhead all the way up to the bridge, there's no restrooms. So people are making their own and just leaving paper products everywhere. And that's a real problem. Um, don't leave trash behind. Boy, if we could just accomplish that much, it would be a huge success. Um, and to deface the rocks, and that, again, that's the sign we're trying to work with. We've got some cameras, but as I said, it's very difficult, even if we catch a person on camera. You really have to catch them in person. We recently had a situation at one of our archaeological sites, where we actually caught a woman defacing the rocks. What the Forest Service will do with that situation, that's up to the law enforcement officers. But every so often, we do get lucky and actually catch someone. I was up at the airport overlook. Here's a mom and a dad and about a 5-year-old, and we're up there cleaning the rocks. Turn around, and here's a 5-year-old right behind us, scratching all over the rocks that we just cleaned. And we, kind of said, hey, and they shook the little boy up, and I apologized that we didn't mean to holler at him, that he didn't know better, and, it's not his fault. But mom and dad, they certainly should know better. So once in a while, we'll catch people. And of course, sometimes people are very proud of the scratching, and they'll put it on Facebook. And that's easy to catch as well. I think that's about it. I think I've hopefully given a lot in a short period of time. If there's any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I think the important thing is that you know how to get in touch with us, and we promise that we will do our absolute best to remove whatever we can find out there. Thank you all for being here, or for inviting us.
Thank you, Jerry. That was great. Thank you, Annie, very much. What I'm kind of speechless when I hear about the graffiti and the people defacing the rocks and leaving trash behind. It's it's really disheartening, but it's good for us to know how to report it. And if we come up with ways, ideas, suggestions for you, we'll certainly pass them along. But thank you for the work you're doing. It's amazing. And we are all beneficiaries of that, and we appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Kathy?
Yes, I totally agree. So thank you so much, Annie and Jerry, for being here. We need people like you. Sometimes it feels like, you're filling in one hole and somebody's digging a hole somewhere else. So I know that must be discouraging, but you keep working at it and it makes our environment better. And we all try to be responsible when we're out in the woods. I know we do. I I don't even like it when somebody cuts the trail because I know that that causes erosion. So we try to be really careful with our footsteps too. But we need people out there, monitoring, and I'm sure we'll all be watching really carefully. And thank you so much for all your work. And I also wanted to thank Randy. I know she had to drop off. I'm sure she's really busy. But we'll do the best we can down here to do everything we can to protect our woods and to protect our rocks. And so, yeah. So thank you for all your information and thank you everyone for coming. I think it was a great meeting. I learned a ton. The thing that I have to say I'm most excited about, and I hope Randy is so correct about that there's prediction that we're going to get the monsoons this year. Now, wouldn't that be a blessing? I mean, that would be, I couldn't ask for more. So let's all pray for rain. It was interesting. There's somebody that's in Cottonwood and they're doing a drum circle for rain. So, I think we all have to put our positive energy that direction, right? All right. So everyone have a wonderful Thursday. But before you leave, Ellen, you want to quickly tell them what our next meeting will be?
Yes, the next meeting will be about a recap of the state legislature and what was passed, what was not passed, what was vetoed. I think it should be interesting. We're going to have Minority Leader Reginald Bolding, who is now a candidate for Secretary of State. He will be joining us and we'll get the inside scoop about what happened this session at the state legislature on a whole variety of different things. It should be a great program.
Yeah, so it's going to be really important for us to all be informed so we know, how to go forward, how to support the good work and how to make the stuff that we don't like this happening known, informing voters. So please invite people. And as I was telling you earlier, this program is going to be up on our website. There will be an email that goes out about it, and you can also find it on our YouTube channel. So have a wonderful, wonderful Thursday. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Kathy.
Thank you.